Hello and welcome to FTTR. I am Ewan McQuaid, and today I want to talk about the new documentary series on the WWE network, and that is WWE Icons. And today I'm talking about the episode centering around the Glamazon Beth Phoenix. Now, these documentaries are presented in about an hour and 10 minutes. They're really long, quite substantial documentaries, and that got me excited because nothing gets me more excited than a good wrestling documentary. And focusing on Beth Phoenix, who is someone that I have sort of grown up around. I got into wrestling sort of 2007, 2008ish, and following her throughout her career basically. That is something that I really looked forward to seeing because I could relate to a lot of the moments that are in the Beth Phoenix episode. Now, was this a good episode? Did this give us the right amount of insight for a documentary of this calibre? I would say yes. I would say this is a very substantial documentary that gives you a really good in-depth look at Beth Phoenix. There's some parts that are sort of breezed over, which I would have liked to have seen more of. I'll get into those in a little bit. But I think the strength of this documentary is how it presents Phoenix and her stature among the women's division. Not just at the time, but currently, in current day, how she's looked upon as a legend, as an icon, as you might say. And that's not something I necessarily thought about Beth Phoenix. Yes, she's come back for the Royal Rumbles and stuff like that, but I've never really pictured her as, this figure. And this documentary really shows how inspirational she was to members of NXT and to members of the main roster. And that's just because of her sort of presence and the way she decided to present herself, and that was modelling herself after China, the wrestler from the 90s. And she presents herself as an athlete, whereas a lot of the women at the time, as she talks about in the documentary, are there for looks. They're not there for wrestling talent, and that is what she wanted to bring to OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, which was the sort of feeder system for the main WWE back in the day, and then into WWE, the main roster. She did that, she overcame all this, and there's a really interesting bit in the documentary that focuses on her arrival in OVW and her development through that process and how they wanted more sex appeal from her when she was just presenting herself as a dominant wrestler. And that is sort of a damning statement on WWE and their sort of not looking at the talent, they're looking at the looks, and that is something that progressively gets explored a little bit more within the documentary and goes forward. But for that moment in particular, that was a real strength and something that I've never really thought about in watching these documentaries and watching these performers, is how they deal with, body issues. And that's something that's explored a little bit in her early life as well, and how she was, growing to be a muscular woman, and how that at the time, sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, that wasn't how society deemed a woman should look. And she really sort of defies those traits, and she sort of really progresses women in not just, WWE, but in sports in general. You distinctly know as well, this was a really interesting fact that I didn't know, she was the first female athlete on her school's wrestling team. And following that, someone from the lacrosse side of things joined the men's lacrosse. And so it's sort of this, snowball effect of it rolling down and Phoenix becoming this inspirational figure. And that is, I'm going to nail that point, that is the strength of this documentary, is it shows her place in history and how she was, she was the Glamazon, she was the Glamazon, and she was a strong female character in a time where WWE didn't have a lot of those. And that is what I will touch upon now, and is the second interesting point, is that this documentary really highlights how WWE treated their women and their female stars. All the feuds were based around, stereotypical girly nonsense that, it's not, me being a white man, I can't exactly relate to it, but I can imagine that they don't want to be treated as, fighting over a man or fighting over their looks. They should be fighting to prove that they're the best. That is what Beth really pushed for, and one of the most heartbreaking things is that she didn't see any change. She didn't think any of that was going to come, and she left. With all the stuff going on in her life, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She decided to leave WWE and not resign because of that issue. Now, I wish, this is one of my only flaws with this documentary, to be honest, I wish that they dived deeper into that. They briefly touch upon Santino Marella and the relationship that Beth had with him on screen and off screen as well. You know, they were good friends. But one of the most infamous WrestleMania moments is, you know, a man winning the women's battle royal. That is very problematic, but it's very, very quickly breezed over, almost instantly. You see a little bit of the match, but you don't see the winner. You don't see her reaction to him winning and whether she liked it or not, because that was a really, really terrible call. And then following that, I appreciate that her position in the Royal Rumble was there. She was the second woman to be in the Royal Rumble. However, the way she went into the Royal Rumble by snogging the great Khali, pulling him over the ropes while Matt Striker yells, "Never trust a woman," that is also incredibly problematic in a company that increasingly started to disrespect female characters and their performers. This documentary, you know, it's a glossy WWE documentary, so it doesn't go into all the hard-hitting points that you want to know about and the decisions that came about due to these, you know, really, really awful, you know, situation with the female athletes and the storylines that they were involved in. However, it does the one thing it set out to do very, very well, and that is present Beth as an incredible star of wrestling in general, and the impact that she has had on many of the performers that we see today. You know, you see Rhea Ripley, Ember Moon, Charlotte, Bianca Belair, all these current stars grew up idolising Beth Phoenix, and I think it does that really well. It really explores her as a person, her relationship with Edge, and her desire to just start a family. I think it's a really good documentary. I just wish, similar to all these WWE documentaries, I just wish we got more out of this, you know, really impactful story, to be honest. So overall, I would probably say that this is a 3.5 out of 5. If it really explored the controversial issues surrounding 2010s, late 2000s WWE women's wrestling, then it'd be even higher, because you can't just push those issues to the side. You have to, you know, face them head on and, you know, give us a reason as to why they were treated like this. So that is my overall score for Beth Phoenix WWE Icons. It's a really interesting series. I'm interested to see the other ones. I'm going to be watching the Yokozuna one. Don't ask me why I've watched episode 2 before episode 1. I just have. The Rob Van Dam one, British Bulldog. I'm really excited to see the rest of these documentaries, and I will have reviews up for each and every one of them. So thank you all ever so much. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you like what you watched. Have you watched this documentary? What are your feelings towards it? Let me know down in the comments, and I will try and reply to every single one of them. Thank you all ever so much for your support, and have a nice day.